Welcome back. Hello, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to Coffee and Ponduce, this week's edition. I want to welcome everyone who's watching us on Facebook Live and also YouTube and our other social media. Your favorite social media app. The people from Massachusetts, Florida, New York, all of the East Coast, and of course all of North Carolina and our Charlotte regional area. I want to welcome you to this edition of Coffee and Ponduce. And our topic for this week is going to be social justice ground zero. Charlotte is basically ground zero for a lot of social justice issues. And where is Governor Cooper during all of this? And so I want to take the time to welcome our guest today. Our neighbor is Sean Tolliver.
Hey, how's it going,
Sean, welcome. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for braving the cold weather. Our other panelists and guests couldn't make it 2 blocks to get here, but we are in South Charlotte. That's kind of how it works here. Please tell us who you are and what groups are you with, if you don't mind.
Yes, my name is Sean Tolliver. I'm on the board of directors for Charlotte Normal. I'm also the chapter president for Minorities for Medical Marijuana in North Carolina, and then I'm the co-founder of C-Tracks, an industrial hemp software platform based here in Charlotte.
Sean, I know you through the Normal group in the Charlotte chapter, and I want to let you know that when I first met you, it was before you decided to run for the board of the Charlotte chapter. I had not heard, very few times do I hear in Charlotte someone as real and as, I don't know how to say it, but as real as what you said about what we need to do here in Charlotte to impact change and to move us forward.
Yeah.
And so many times here in Charlotte, and I've said this in other shows, people in Charlotte, there's this old Southern, I don't want to offend anyone, kind of mentality. Mm-hmm. And we skirt around such important issues, and you said some things that I think were very important. Hopefully we'll have those conversations on this topic, but also on into the prohibition of cannabis. So thank you for joining us, because
thank you for having me.
We had that with Mark Jarrell. Commissioner Mark Jarrell was on our show 3 weeks ago. And I was so excited because most of my neighbors here, they kind of skirt issues when we're talking about, they're trying to be so polite. I'm like, Minister Mack with the NAACP is a shero of mine, and she just calls it like it is, and she's from New York, and I love that because we need that more here in Charlotte. So
I think if something's important to you, there's no time to skirt the issue. There's no time to be light-handed with it. I think you got to be direct. I think you got to be to the point.
Exactly.
So that way everyone knows where they stand at. And I feel like that's how you get honest dialogue done, and you can make things make sense.
Exactly. And so I do want to, before we get into our conversations, I want to remind everyone to please share us on your social media outlets. I'll be doing that as you're talking. So if I'm looking away, please forgive me, because we're trying to share all of our platforms. And usually when we have more guests, it's a lot easier for me to kind of do this, because Chistipa tries to do it behind the scenes. Before that, I do have to mention our Ponduce sponsor. Our sponsor for our Ponduce is Blau Catering, Miss Heidi Blau. Once again, she's the owner of Blau Catering. So if you do have catering needs, please contact her for any office parties, quinceañeras, family events, whatever. Please contact her at 704-805-0269. Once again, Blau Catering is sponsoring our Ponduce. So thank you so much, Miss Heidi Blau. It is always delicious, and we all wonderful. So please help yourself, Sean. And I also want to remind everyone, if you would like to sponsor one of our upcoming shows, whether it's on the Facebook Live event or on one of the social media platforms, please remember to contact Kali Lily's event coordinator and talent agency at 980-477-1513. Once again, our show is targeted towards the fastest growing demographic here in the Charlotte region, also in North Carolina, and in around the United States, the Latinx community demographically, and our allies. So please reach out to us if you'd like to sponsor one of our future shows as we expand our format to get our educational and political views out to our listeners and our families. So we all start off in a traditional salute to Coffee and Ponduce. So salute. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
I have not had breakfast, so if I'm sitting here, my stomach starts to goggle. Please forgive me. Let's get to button of the week. what we do on our show is we allow our guests and our panelists to talk about an issue that's very important to them. The button that I have on this week is, of course, I always wear the Medicare for All button because that's something that's very important, and I think that we need that here in the United States. I also wear my Moms Demand Action American flag for gun reform. Please, those are issues that are very important. But this is a very appropriate button I'm going to wear once again. This is probably the third time I've done it on this show. Our Latinos vote. We have so many very important elections occurring in 2019. Our city council elections, our mayor elections, our precinct and party county chairperson elections. And it's very important that our Latinx community show their voices and show their influence. We have determined a lot of elections over the last 2 years here in Mecklenburg County and also North Carolina. I believe that we actually determined the governor, and we'll be talking about that a little bit in just a bit. And so please make sure you are registered to vote. And if you're not registered, or if you decide you don't want to vote, which I hope you do, you can always get involved in your community or your precinct or whatever is important. So, Sean, if you had a button, or do you have a button?
I rushed and I left my
that's
button
okay.
at home.
That's okay. That happens all the time here on this show. What button would you be?
Minorities for medical marijuana.
Okay.
I think it's very near and dear to my heart that not only do we pass cannabis decriminalization and legalization, but I think it's also important that we stop locking up young people of color and giving them criminal records and exposing them to the criminal justice system for something as simple as a plant. I think it's unfair. I think it's biased policing. I think it's lazy policing. And I feel like there's a much more effective way of managing this plant and its use among the people. Okay. And so we advocate for social justice, social equity inside the cannabis space. We don't want to just advocate to participate. Advocate to medicate, but we want to advocate to participate. Okay. I want to show people of color that there's avenues to become owners and operators and large-scale cultivators. This is the new green rush. Sure. And sitting back and idly letting corporate America or big pharma take our place in this industry when it should be ours, because only our communities have been persecuted underneath the cannabis legislation. Yeah. I feel like it's important to all of us. I feel like this is generational wealth that's waiting to happen.
And we're going to be talking about that on the second segment of our show, or one of the segments. So let's jump right into what's going on. And everyone knows that we are in the midst of some horrific ICE raids here in North Carolina. And when I say ICE, I don't mean ICE. I mean Immigration and Customs Enforcement. And it has been it's been especially concerning to my family and many families out there, because it's not your typical what we would call ICE raids. This has been, in my view, targeting to terrorize our Latinx, brown, and black people of color, not only here in North Carolina, but all of the Charlotte region, or the Charlotte region, North Carolina. And that is very concerning. And it is double concerning that we have heard almost nothing from our Charlotte City Council, our Charlotte Mayor, Val Lyles. We've heard from Braxton Winston, who has stepped up. We've heard from Luana Mayfield, from Matt Newton, some other city council members. We've heard from Mark Jarrell, Pat Cotham, McDonald, County Commissioner as well. They have showed their concern, but we've heard nothing from Val Lyles, which is very concerning as a Democrat, but also as a neighbor. We have also heard nothing from Governor Cooper. And this is the reason it's so concerning to me, is because in my view, and I've said this many times, and I always try to say something controversial on the show. In my view, in Charlotte and North Carolina, unfortunately, unless it is an issue that impacts white women or white gay people, it very rarely gets attention from certain people in our political leadership. If a white woman were to be accosted or harassed jogging down Providence Road or the Greenway, oh my goodness, all heck would break loose. But the fact that it's impacting our neighbors of color, and especially Latinx community, which many people don't understand the power of the Latinx community politically, because we're relatively a new community in the North Carolina area, it's getting no attention. So tell me what you know about it, or how you feel about it, if you have any feelings on the ICE raids.
I think I think it's really reflective of what the black community has been experiencing for a long time: systematic and targeted oppression.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like ICE is doing this. This is like a political retaliation, right? This isn't about making the streets safer. This isn't about helping anybody. Like, this doesn't impact, like, the difference between an undocumented and a documented person, right? What's the, if they're both going to work and they're both paying property taxes, right?
Yeah.
There's really no difference in it. And I don't feel any safer
Sure.
because they've been doing raids in South Charlotte or wherever they want to do it at. I don't feel any more comfortable as a charlatan because ICE is running around arresting people because they got a DWI 10 years ago. Like, what sense does that make? How is it bringing any value to our community? How is it making anyone else more safe? To me, I feel like, if anything, especially when you have these, like, I know that from what I was reading, they have like stops where it's both local law enforcement and ICE.
Well, CMPD is saying they're not participating in this, but Councilman Winston kind of called him out on that on the city council meeting, I think last week, where he said, if that is the case, why are you having these stops at 6 a.m? No one is going to, I mean, that's obviously to help ICE because traditionally
You're
when they
catching
put
people
these...
going to work.
Exactly. Who are you trying to stop? Exactly. Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
so why are we stopping anyone from going to work? Why would we stop anyone from helping build our city?
Yeah.
You know, so I've gotten firsthand accounts of folks that told me that they're doing these stops, and ICE are coming up to cars that were selectively chosen.
Yeah.
And they interview these folks, and they don't realize they're being interviewed by immigration and customs officials.
Yeah.
And that's insane. I personally could not imagine the fear that it takes for me to not want to take my kid to school.
Yeah.
I can't imagine the fear of knowing that if I drop my kid off at daycare today, I may not pick them back up. And that's and undocumented, documented, to me, that's outrageous. It shouldn't happen. Folks shouldn't live in fear like that. There shouldn't just be these massive sweeps where you're picking up anyone and anyone that you think fits the description. Because to me, it sounds like the same raids that went on in my community when I was growing up. And it just sounds like illegal police action.
You know, it's interesting you say that, Sean, because as a Charlottenian and those of us who live in this wonderful, beautiful city that I believe will become the new capital of the South, I know within my Latinx family, in our family, we have not really had any allies except for the African American and the black community. They have stood up for us over the last 20, 25 years because we're relatively politically a young community, so to speak, where many families here are first or second generation, whereas in a lot of states, in Chicago, New York, they're fourth, fifth generation.
Right.
Even there, you know, they're all embedded in politics and they're precinct chair people or whatever. The NAACP and our black brothers and sisters have stood up for us when no one else has. And that's why I joined the NAACP with Minister Mack and a lot of the things that she has been really many of our black brothers and sisters have been our only advocates here. We've had the white community who has kind of, I'm sorry to hear what's going on for you, but they don't really. We have a lot of allies.
Yeah, they don't embrace the struggle.
They don't because they don't understand the struggle, and yeah. Even though I'm saying this because I know there are a lot of Latinx families out there that don't understand that. I'm trying to say this kind of, I don't want to say delicately, but we've got to make sure that as we move forward, that we continue to support our black brothers and sisters and the struggles that they continue to go through in this city, even when we're going through this, because we are stronger together, and we are. The goal has always been to divide and conquer in any. I think in cities that are growing like this, we saw that in Atlanta, we see that in Dallas, we see that in Miami, and it's important that we do not become it's us, it's their issue or whatever.
Bucket mentality.
Yes.
And it's funny, I was talking with somebody on the phone, Elkie, who's coming into her own as a cannabis advocate out in Raleigh, and that was one thing that I talked to her about specifically. I said, look, hateful individuals, especially hateful white male Americans, and I don't mean to say that against all Caucasian Americans. I have brothers and sisters that, that they're family to me,
sure,
regardless of their skin complexion, right? But there are those that have hate in their heart, right? And those folks are more practiced and more skilled at dividing a united people.
That's kind of
than anything we've really ever experienced, right? So it's at the end of the day, when we stop saying that's a their problem, that's a their problem, that's a their problem, when we recognize that we all need freedom, we all need respect, we all need equality, we all need a balanced playing field. Right? We just want to be able to wake up and go to work with the same opportunities that everyone else has. We want to be able to live our life in the best way possible, just like anyone else can. And I don't feel like that's demanding too much. I don't feel like hardworking, undocumented immigrants don't deserve an opportunity to stay here, live a happy and healthy life, and raise their family.
Exactly.
But persecuting people and harassing folks and then turning your back on that struggle, look, we've seen all the films of the black community in the struggle. We've seen the dogs and the water hoses. We've seen the men being shot that are unarmed. That still happen to this day, right? And that's a struggle for all of us.
And I think it's really important that as we move forward as a community and as a city, that I would really encourage our Latinx community and neighbors to not just go to Latinx events. Go, for an example, tonight there's an event going on at the Living Museum of the South of Braxton Winston. I encourage you to go to these events and learn about what's happening, what happened in the past in Charlotte and North Carolina. Because, as you said, this ICE raid, so to speak, reminds you of things that have happened within your own community.
Facts.
And we can't forget history. It continues to repeat itself. And this is why I've been asking, and many people within our entire state, and not just Latinx community, allies, people of faith, and so forth, have been asking, where is Governor Cooper during all of this? Where is Mayor Lyles during all of this? Because it is, and I don't think anyone expects the governor or the mayor to come out and say, just show some decency and some concern about people that are being marginalized.
I think, let's just be frank, I think they're scared. It's a third rail right in politics, right?
But why? I don't understand why.
Because there's people out here.
Please speak on behalf of Mayor Lyles' campaign and so forth.
Obviously, like Mayor Lyles won't even respond to my emails for a meeting. But I think you need to stop being scared. I think you need to say what you really feel, right, and take a stance. And you can't watch a whole section of the city be terrorized and then be quiet about it. It just doesn't make any sense.
We talk about it a lot on this show. I was a congressional candidate in 2016 against Robert Pittenger, and of course I lost the primary in 2018. But and that's why it's always exciting when Jeff is on the show. He'll be calling, and he's actually in Raleigh, and we kind of understand the happenings in the backstory of politics in North Carolina. And there is this myth, and we continue to say this, and it continues to be proven true. There's this myth with Democrats in North Carolina that you can't be a true Democrat. And I say this about Mayor Lyles. I truly believe that she is so concerned about upsetting a few white people in South Charlotte and Myers Park that she's willing to just forget what's occurring in the rest of the city, because she and people like Mayor Lyles, I guess politically, they think, well, they're going to vote for me regardless. But what we're seeing in Charlotte and in Mecklenburg County is that's not the case. We're seeing progressives and we're seeing true Democrats saying now, we're no longer going to operate like that. You either run as a Democrat, represent our families and represent our diversity, or we're not going to let you get past the primary. And so I think whatever this calculated decision by Mayor Lyles to not say something, or the governor, it's going to backfire.
Probably.
And I do believe that she's going to have a very difficult time in the primary, and she's almost getting to the point where it may be too late for her. I never want to say it's too late, because I always want to give people the opportunity to come and say, you know what, we need to speak out or whatever. But it's difficult whenever you see people being marginalized to see an elected official remain silent. For me, it's because I don't understand the downside. What's the downside? You lose 3 white votes. They weren't going to vote for you anyway. You know.
Well, we know it's not just about the votes, right? We know it's always about money.
Exactly. It's the donors. Yeah.
It's always about money. And look, we've been dealing with this struggle since the '60s.
Yeah.
You know, my mom and the struggle. My mom's from Philadelphia, where they bombed the whole city block because they didn't like the black people living on it. You know, and the police did that, and no one spoke up and no one cared. No one thought it was a problem. It was accepted. So, you know, I celebrate the fact that it's okay for us to speak out against the injustice and bring attention to it, because, like I said, you know, historically, you know, that was oppressed for 20, 30, 40 years. And it is disappointing to see somebody not take a stance. And I think, I think I've said it a couple of times in any public event that you see me at is, you know, you don't take a stance for what's right. If you don't take a stance for social justice and social equality, then it's okay. We'll just stop asking you to, and you'll just get out the way.
No, and I love the fact that you say that, because that, I'll be honest with you, 2-3 years ago, when someone said something like that in Charlotte, most people in the political arena, especially the people that I am familiar with, they would see that as an extremist or whatever. That's never. We've changed a lot in Charlotte. We didn't even know we were going to be talking about 3 years ago cannabis.
Yeah.
3 years ago, talking about cannabis was something you didn't even talk about. When I campaigned in 2016 and 2015,
it wasn't even
all
a
up and
conversation.
down, there were people in Cumberland County that were talking about the issue from PTSD, from veterans and so forth. And that's how I started to kind of first, we were testing the waters about that messaging and so to speak, but it wasn't on a message that we could run on in 2016. Medicare for all wasn't even something. That was something Bernie was talking about. It was a socialist idea or you know, whatever. Fast forward now, it's part of your mainstream platform for most progressive Democrats, because that is something. So when you say that, to me, it is almost, I get really excited to hear that, because that is where we need to be here in Charlotte to move forward. We can't continue the way we are in Charlotte and move this city forward.
Well, to me, like cannabis decriminalization and legalization, and Charlotte Normal's perspective on that is that's how you get Medicare for all.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's how you give teachers pay raises. That's how that's how you give more funding to law enforcement to allow for them to do a better job approaching major crime.
And Sean, hold that thought just for a second, because that's a perfect segue for us to go into our second segment. But before we do that, we're actually waiting on a phone call from Jeff Scott, who is our sidekick, our man about town. He is actually in Raleigh, and he is at the Board of Elections, North Carolina Board of Elections trial, I guess you would call it. Of course, those who've been following us and know that there are some concerns about the absentee ballot situation in Bladen County and Robeson County. I've said as much as I can say about that. I think this may be him. Let me double check to see if this is him. Jeff?
This is Jeff Scott.
Oh, hey, perfect timing. Jeff, let me make sure that I can get your volume up here so we can hear you. We're actually live on Facebook, and thank you for calling in. We miss you here in Charlotte. How's the weather in Raleigh?
Well, it's very cold and icy, and I think the size of the crowd actually reflects the fact that the conditions aren't quite ideal outside. Everybody's a little chilly.
Well, thank you for being there, and of course you're one of the candidates that's impacted by what's happening. As many of y'all may out there know, that there were 3 candidates on the ballot. There was Dr. Mark Harris, the Republican candidate. There was Dan McCready, the Democratic nominee, and of course Jeff Scott was the Libertarian nominee. Thank you for calling in, Jeff. Tell us what's going on there, or what's been happening the last couple of days.
Well, Monday it was very crowded, President's Day, and the hearing started at 10 a.m. And we heard the first part of the state staff. The State Board of Elections has a professional staff. They're very capable, and they've done a fairly thorough investigation, and they presented an overview of their findings. Then they started calling witnesses after their presentation, and so we're still going through the board's witnesses. Now, 80 witnesses have been called, and we're only on we haven't even been through 10.
Wow.
So that shows you the pace of it. They've already expanded it to another day. This will go into third day. But they've also been, as they get some testimony, they're winnowing the witness pool. So a lot of the witnesses who were to be called have already left.
Okay.
So here it is on Wednesday, and they're wrapping up testimony with Andy Yates, who is head of the Red Dome political consultant group, who was hired by Dr. Mark Harris, and who also paid Leslie McCrae Dulce, who after this I'll just refer to him as McCrae. Yeah. So he's the guy who is kind of the center of the storm, and the guy whose pictures you see in the paper a lot when you see articles about the scandal.
Well, I know you may not have a lot of time because you want to try to get back into the hearings, but is there something that has surprised you that we have not been talking about over the last couple of weeks, or is it pretty much what you think, or what's your thoughts on what's happening?
Well, I do want to say at the outset that I think the state board, the appointed board, is pretty good at what they're doing, and I think that the staff of the Board of Elections, many of whom I've had an opportunity to chat with, especially some people who are working behind the scenes here, they're very capable people, and I think they want to do the right thing and make sure this goes very smoothly. So I think we should be thankful. Voters of North Carolina should be thankful that we do have capable people running this. So, and I also believe that both of the councils, the Attorney Friedman and the Attorney Mark Elias for Dan McCready. Well, Friedman is working for Dr. Harris, and Elias is working for Dan McCready. I think they're both very capable, and it's been pretty amicable, as far as legal proceedings and hearings go. So I've learned a lot listening to them and sort of following their strategy. As you know, I am not a trained lawyer, and I don't really have counsel here. Sure. I have a stake in the outcome, but I think both counsels are doing a really good job so far in getting their message across. So I guess the one insight that I have, I think, right now, is that I think Mark Harris is really in a box, and I think the least bad option for him is to say that he was simply, he was fooled, which means he was running a campaign and wasn't confident enough to understand what was going on. Sure. He might have been looking at the people who are working for him with, rose-tinted glasses. Yep. If you're, if I'm a Republican and I say, oh, you want to work for me and you're a Republican, oh, it's okay. I'm not going to do a vigorous background check. Yeah. You're a good old boy and you're going to work for us, and that's fine. And so I think that obviously that is what is really going to come back to haunt him in the hours ahead. Sure. In the hours ahead when he gets on the stand. Yeah. Mark Elias is a very capable attorney, and he's really going to, again, the least bad option for Mark is to just simply say, I blew it. I hired somebody who lied to me and who did these things to me. but that's not good for him in the general election if there has to be a re-election.
Yeah.
And the Republicans might just decide, well, we showed ourselves to be incompetent. We showed ourselves to be looking the other way about the kind of people that we hire.
Yeah.
So there you go. That's my outlook.
It's insane that it's even an option.
Jeff, and I agree with you. And I kind of watched a very short segment of Andy Yates on the live streaming, and when he was talking about the way the campaign was run and so forth, I'll be honest with you. What he said is not that much different on how campaigns are run. I think people have this perception that everyone has the money that Dan McCready has. 99% of candidates that run in North Carolina, and even congressional candidates, they don't have the millions of dollars that Dan McCready has. They have the budget that Mark Harris has. I was surprised on how, as you said, how most candidates are pretty in tune with what's going on with their campaign. Even if you have money or you don't have any money, you're pretty aware of what's going on out there. I was surprised on how, what it seems is Dr. Harris kind of gave people the benefit of the doubt on his campaign. I was a little surprised on that because you're right, at the congressional level, you would expect that the candidate would have more control of their campaign. So that was a little surprising, yeah.
And I have argued this during the general election. During the general election campaign, one of the points I was making on the campaign trail with adversarial voters, non-supporters, was that I was the candidate that was temperamentally best suited.
Yeah.
Because I'm the one that has the professional experience going back several decades.
Yep.
And I don't want to discount either Dan McCready's professional experience or Mark Harris.
Well, Dan McCready doesn't have any professional experience other than I'm a Marine.
Well, I didn't want to sound snarky about it.
Oh, I'll do it for you.
But I've got the temperament for the position, and I just don't think that they. Mark Harris has shown himself to have, a certain amount of gullibility, misplaced faith, whatever you want to call it. I think it's just going to come back to bite him. So that means I'm thinking more about the re-election campaign, and he might be thinking about it too. So let's we'll hold our cards a little closer now.
That's right.
There might be two special elections in the state of North Carolina, both in District 3 for Walter Jones and in District 9 for our race.
I agree. I agree. And having that other election for congressional seat number 3 that may be in conjunction with the 9th is going to add a certain dynamic because I think, I'll say this, I think it will actually be more difficult for Democrats because now you have 2 seats. You have one, what you would call a safe Republican seat, and then you have the congressional seat number 9, which is more leaning Republican. The Republican Party, they're probably going to put a lot more money, and I would say the Democratic Party is going to put a lot less money into Dan McCready's campaign because he spent $10 million and, in my view, just wasted that money. Had no get out the vote effort in Bladen County. We wouldn't even be in this situation had he tried to get out the vote in Bladen and Robeson County. Had he even had the courage to ask for a recount, we wouldn't be in this situation because they would have caught this absentee ballot. But you know what's really concerning to me, even though I did give up for Lent ragging on Dan McCready, technically Lent doesn't start yet. Lent doesn't start yet. I'm surprised that we have not seen Dan McCready once at these hearings. What's up with that?
Well, I think we don't want to go too deeply into personal issues about people, but we can talk a little bit about his personality.
Sure.
And I had the same conversation with Mark Harris just just a couple days. I've been talking to Dr. Harris and his wife and sort of working with people and talking to the media. And one of the things that is pretty clear about Dan McCready is that he is uncomfortable in public situations.
Well, then why are you?
He ran a campaign where he wanted to be insulated. He only spoke to supporters. He didn't want want to speak to
Yes.
adversaries. Even when I tried to pin him down, and the one time I met him,
That's right, at Queen's University.
He simply couldn't engage in a rational conversation with me about planning, and he just kind of grinned and walked away.
Well,
so I just don't think he's really ready for prime time.
Well, I think that's very important for us to remember, because when we have something as Shaspeet has given us the time is up, but I think that's something we remember. Jeff, you have been there in the community. You have been at these events because you're running for the serious job of Congress, and I appreciate the fact that you're out there. And to his credit, Dr. Harris, even though there's all this pressure on him, he's out there as well, but we have not seen Dan McCready. And I think that's something that voters need to take in consideration. If this is how you act, or this is how you are during tough times, how do we expect you to have the courage to represent us in Congress? This is not a city council seat. Yeah, this is not a city council. This is a congressional member who wants to run for Congress. And I am completely amazed on the Dan McCready, and we continue to ask Dan McCready supporters, please come on the show. Tell us why you support Dan McCready. We have not been able to find one person in the entire city of Charlotte that has told us why they support. They've told us why they don't like me. They've told us why they hate Trump, why they think Mark Harris is homophobic or whatever. Yeah. I know that. But tell us why you're voting for Dan McCready. What does he stand for? And I appreciate you. Yeah.
They're going to be looking for a long time, and now is going to be my time to reach out to disaffected Democrats who know that he's a very flawed candidate, and it's my opportunity to reach out for, frankly, to some of the evangelicals who may be uncomfortable with a secular candidate like myself.
Well, Jeff, I know you have a lot of supporters out there, and I thank you for calling in. And if there is a re-election or a redo, I know you're going to go out there and speak to the community, and I thank you. Actually, Sean Tolliver is with us here as one of our panelists. He's with the Charlotte Normal. And Jeff is actually how I met Jeff originally, was at a Charlotte Normal event.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he is, there are certain views that I didn't know I was libertarian. So
there you go. Yeah, well, Sean, thank you so much for coming on to this webcast today. It's very important to get the message out about cannabis freedom, especially in North Carolina. We don't want to be left behind the curve. There's 32, 33 states around the country. Reefer madness is dead. I say that on the campaign trail. I appreciate the work that you're doing and the work that Normal's doing. Got to get this message out for people who need medical marijuana, our veterans, and other people with trauma and pain management. So very, very important. And just for the record, I'm for full legalization. I believe people have the right for recreational use of cannabis. So there you go.
Well, thank you for giving us those updates today too.
Well, thank you. Did I hang up on you? There you go. Thank you very much. I guess I did.
Still there? We cut
off. Here we go. All right. Well, thank you, Jeff, and we'll see you next week on the show. All right. Well, I get it. All right. Well, technology. Thank you, Jeff, for updating us. And before we jump into the cannabis topic, I need to talk about our sponsor once again. Blau Catering. Heidi Blau is the owner of Blau Catering. She's providing our pan dulce, 704-805-0269. Thank you, Heidi, for providing us the delicious sponsoring our pan dulce. And also, we did get while we were talking earlier, we understand that, and I did not mention that, and I apologize, that Mayor Lyles, the Charlotte Mayor Lyles, did create an ad hoc committee in Charlotte to look into the eye situation. I was aware of that.
Okay.
My feedback on that is I'm not sure why you need a committee to see that people are being discriminated against. If it's in front of you, just say what's happening is wrong. I don't understand why you need a committee. Charlotte is infamous for forming these committees. We had this same type of committee about 5-6 years ago. It was called the Committee on Immigration. And it was supposed to be a committee to talk about what we were going to do in Charlotte to be a more welcoming city for our immigrant community, because there were some situations that happened in the past. The committee was in for 2 years. They presented to the Charlotte City Council their findings, and at that time, the mayor Claude Felter and Viles was on the Charlotte City Council. They said, "Thank you for your. We'll look into it." Nothing has been done. So, in my view, Charlotte forms committees when they just kind of want to shut people up and kind of put them to the side.
Like gather information so we don't have to do anything.
Exactly. So even though I appreciate the fact that that has been done, it's almost like telling someone when their house is on fire, we're going to get the fire department. Hold on a second. You know, I don't know if that's a good analogy, but so that was what my concern was about the committee. So let's jump into the medical cannabis, because I keep saying medical cannabis. 4 years ago, there were people talking about cannabis and medical cannabis. In my election in 2016, we started to hear about the importance of ending the prohibition of cannabis in Cumberland County, a lot in around the Fort Bragg area where a lot of retirees lived. Mm-hmm. And then as we came more this way, we started to hear it from farmers and people in the agriculture industry who were growing hemp. I think that had passed and so forth. And then I attended a Charlotte Normal meeting, and I was educated on the facts about the ending the prohibition of cannabis. And I started to realize this is an issue that is, it touches all demographics. So tell us what's going on with the movement here in North Carolina, if you don't mind, as the expert in this field.
First, I wouldn't say I'm an expert. I think I'm just part of a group of people that are committed to finding some freedom and some equality in this space. And you know, because I'm big and light skinned and I got a big voice, I tend to get some attention, I guess. But we are actively working on decriminalization. Mm-hmm. I don't want to just wait for medical, because medical is the path of least resistance, because we're in the conservative South. Yeah. I feel like medical legalization without decrim is a slap in the face to the minority community. Okay. Like if you look in places like Florida, where they have medical cannabis, but yet the arrest rate for cannabis is skyrocketing.
Explain to us, for those who aren't as familiar with, when you say decriminalization, you mean, what does that mean?
That means possession of anything less than 2 ounces. You don't go to jail. You don't get a ticket. You don't get it confiscated. It is no longer an excuse for police to violate your freedoms. Mm-hmm. Okay? It means that the smell of cannabis in a car shouldn't be the reason why someone gets detained. Mm-hmm. It means that it shouldn't be a reason for someone to get a record because they have a joint.
And why is that important to us?
It's important to us because it's...
Specifically Latinx and brown and black...
because this criminalized cannabis has always been about oppressing people of color. Mm-hmm. Right? It's always been about money. Yep. Let's not take money from the cotton industry. Sure. And we only think that jazz musicians and like degenerates use cannabis. Yeah. So we're going to criminalize it and arrest everyone that possesses it. And that's not the case. It's not like what the district attorney of South Carolina said, where it's the most dangerous drug in America. Mm-hmm. The most dangerous drug in America is sold by CVS. Mm-hmm. You know, but no one wants to talk about that. Yeah. Nobody wants to address that. And that's why decriminalization is so important, because you can't tell 5 or 10% or 20% of the community, oh, you know, you have PTSD, you have aches and pains, so it's a valid use for you. But it's not a valid use for the guy that was incarcerated for 8 years and has PTSD from prison. Why can't he use it?
I was not, sorry to interrupt you, Sean, but I was there's a lot of research that I was not aware of that is out there about cannabis, and I use the word cannabis, and I'll admit I'm probably part of that group that was taught marijuana is for, like you said, the degenerates and so forth, and it's kind of this myth that I was brought up. You know, I grew up in the '80s, and you had the potheads, so to speak, and then you had the preppy kids, and then you had the religious kids or whatever. And I was kind of, I guess I was kind of like the new wave kid or whatever. But we didn't do pot. That was like we were the good kids. We snuck wine coolers, and that was as bad as we got. So there was this image in our head that marijuana was like the drug for the bad people, and I'll admit that image in my head probably was set until I went to these meetings.
Yeah. Until
I saw the diversity of the people at the meetings that I've attended, and I've heard the stories. And there are people that truly want this for recreational reasons or whatever the case may be. But that's the case with alcohol. That's the case, whatever the case may be. And so then, as I started listening to this, and also as I started to listen to the libertarian standpoint on this, I realized I'm pretty much a libertarian on this issue. That I truly believe, or I feel like the state should have a right to determine what's best, or an individual should have a right to determine what's best for them, just as my family here has a cabinet full of alcohol.
Yeah.
If we had children here, we probably would put a lock on it, or whatever the case may be.
But it's not the state's business that you have a cabinet full of
alcohol. Yes, exactly.
It's your right as an American. It's your right as a person to have your cabinet full of alcohol and consume it however you want to. If you want it in a mixed drink, if you want it as a shot, it's your right. And it should be the same thing with cannabis.
And so as I've been to these meetings and I've heard the data and the facts, cannabis or marijuana, I don't know why it's hard for me to say the word marijuana. I don't know why. It's really
racist.
You think that's?
I think the term marijuana was used as part of this criminalization.
Yeah,
and it's used as a derogatory term.
Yeah,
and it's used to buy into the reefer madness again, right? Oh my God, they're over there smoking marijuana, right? And no, it's somebody decompressing, and we don't look at folks that have a drink after work with the same disdain, and it's all hypocritical. And it's all an excuse. Marijuana has been literally the legal excuse for law enforcement for decades to persecute people of color.
Well, I definitely believe, and this is one of the reasons that I have tried to make sure that we have this discussion at the congressional level, because at the end of the day, even if North Carolina, which I think is going to happen, I think it's going to happen in the next 3 to 4 years. I'd
be disappointed if it took that long.
Yes, I hope it happens sooner. But I think the obstacles are not necessarily the people that we think are the obstacles. I think the obstacles are people within my own Democratic Party. We have elected officials at our state level that are completely ignorant, and I think willfully ignorant, on the data that is out there about cannabis and marijuana. It is more, cannabis and marijuana is more researched than second only to aspirin. Is that something? Is that data correct?
It's absolutely correct, and that's with no federal funding and no real federal support.
So imagine if we were able to
being ignorant of the value of cannabis is a choice.
Sure,
and I don't respect it. I don't say, oh, let's just forgive him because he's ignorant.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not really a fan of that. Right, because I had to educate myself.
Sure,
and past the idea of recreational use and past the idea of my own issues and things like that. I had to educate myself on the real value of this plant. And when you can build flame retardant homes and when you can you can build fiber and you can stop kids from having seizures and you can help folks cope with massive pain and get them back to working instead of them being addicted and laid up on their couch like opioids. To me, not understanding this plant is willful ignorance. And I can't endorse that. And if you're willfully ignorant of any intelligent subject, then you shouldn't be in office.
And I appreciate the fact that Normal, and especially the Charlotte chapter, has been doing their best to educate people and also hold people accountable that are running for office. Not only have y'all been trying to hold people accountable at the local level, at the county commission level, and having them tell us where you stand on this issue. And I have seen individuals that I did not think would speak out on this that have now come out because they realize they're on the wrong side of the data and so forth. But there are still individuals that are kind of holding out for whatever reason, and you guys are going to go after them, I guess. Is that a polite way of saying it, or what are you going to educate them? Or
I was
what are
about
you
to
do?
say, I won't say we want to go after
Sure.
them, right? But we do want to sit down with folks that don't agree with pro-cannabis legislation, and we want to educate them. We want to talk to them. We want them to understand why this is important to us, why it's not just a getting high thing, but it's a social justice thing. We want to talk to them about, instead of incarcerating and criminalizing young men of color, we want to talk about understanding what they're going through, embracing it, and trying to help them get into the workforce and try and help them get further education. And there's a way to handle this. That's a responsible way, and it being criminalized.
I'm going to ask you a question, but I want to read what someone who's watching us, Larry Griffin. Thank you, Larry, for watching us. He wrote on here. Is this right, Chisipa? Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. What a great quote. Thank you, Larry, for giving us that quote. I don't know if that's from you or if that's from someone else, but thank you. That's very important on what we spoke about earlier. But here's a question. And doing this show has been it's been a growing experience for me in many, many ways. And that's probably one of the reasons why I wanted to do this show. I grew up in a very, I guess now I didn't realize, a conservative family where we did not talk about issues that were controversial. It was assimilate, play the white man's game so you can succeed. I'm even kind of hard. It's hard for me to say that because I've lived in that world for so long.
Right.
I never felt Latino or Latinx until I moved to Charlotte. Quite honestly, I always felt part of the establishment, I guess what you want to call it.
I understand.
When I ran for office in 2016, that's when I started to realize the different expectations or the different standards that are applied to me that were, I never felt that way. And I almost started, I started to feel almost embarrassed and ashamed because we have so many people in this city, specifically people of color, that have experienced what I've experienced in the last 4 years, their entire life. And I felt almost ashamed because I was like, I'm ashamed that I never understood what they were going through because I guess I didn't feel it. And so when you were talking, I had like a flashback of the old me, so to speak. When you were saying, we need to, I guess you didn't say it like this, but care for the people who've been arrested or whatever the case may be. The old part of me thought of my dad, who I love my dad. He's a wonderful man. He's my hero. But there's a part of me that would said, why should we care about them? Why? Because they made their decision. This. There's a part of me that is like indifferent in a way. And
everyone that thinks indifferent,
sure,
until it affects their family. Sure. Until it affects them. And, and I understand why folks outside of the black community might feel some indifference, right? But I've watched dozens of young men, 16, 17, 18, get criminalized for a plant because, they were in an abusive home or they were surrounded by gang violence and they didn't know a way to cope. They didn't know a way to deal. Yeah. And see, the big problem with cannabis is that the same kids that go through those trials and tribulations in majority white communities, they get counseling. They get therapy. They get help. In the black community, they get a jail sentence.
Why do you? I know you don't have all the answers, but this. I have these conversations with other people. I think to myself, we know this, and I say we as the former we.
Yeah, the collective.
Yes. We know this. Us who live out in South Charlotte, North Providence, and the hood. For us, this is the hood. We know this. Why do you think it's so hard for us to accept the fact that we know there is this? I know there are double standards, and anyone who lives in South Charlotte or this side of town, so to speak, We know there's double standards.
Yeah.
We know we don't see a police for months, but when we go to West Side or other areas, there are 4 or 5 police that we pass. It's
Facts.
over police. We know that. We know that if person of color is walking in our neighborhood, we think twice. We know that.
Mm-hmm.
But why is it so? It's like we know it, but we don't want. I don't even know how to say this, but it's like
the same reason why people know that what's happening in the Latino community is wrong, and they're scared to take a stance.
That's right. Yeah,
it's the exact same undercurrent thought, right? This, let's say we're not going to say it's racism. We're going to say it's a byproduct of racism, right? It's like apathetic racism. By choosing not to participate and choosing not to care, and by choosing to say that it's not your struggle. Oh, that's the poor black kid's struggle over there. That's the poor Latino kid's struggle over there. It's not really my issue.
That's a good point. I'm wondering if, and I can't speak for everybody, even though sometimes I try to. I wonder if sometimes we don't say that because we're afraid that we will have to admit that we do have some racism and some bigotry, and that's hard for us to.
Everyone is biased.
Yes.
And I think the first problem and the first hardship is addressing that and saying, understand that I have some issues.
Sure.
But I'm going to make myself more educated about those issues before I rush to judgment. And before I rush to take a stance that's anti-people.
Sure.
I would challenge folks, if folks want to ask me, why should we care about young black men being arrested for cannabis? I want to ask them, why shouldn't they?
Yeah.
Let's have the real conversation as to why you shouldn't care that young men under the age of 18 are being arrested for this. Like those are your future taxpayers. Those are your future electricians, your future teachers, future law enforcement, some of them, right? And shouldn't we have an invested issue with ensuring that they live the best possible life?
That makes sense. But you would not believe how many houses I've been to in my neighborhood where we have started to have this conversation. And even I am shocked at what has come out of their mouths. And I think I know them. And there is this mentality, and I don't understand it. And even though sometimes it frustrates me because I want to say, what world do you live in? That's just part of doing business in America. It's part of, that's just, there are people that actually believe that the over-policing of people of color in certain sections of Charlotte, that is what keeps them safe or whatever the case may be. But we know, and you've said this before, if you are a person, a privileged person, and you're driving on Providence Road or Colony Road, and a police officer pulls you over, and they smell something, they're probably not going to say anything.
They're going to write you a ticket.
Yes. But if you are on another side of town...
You're on BED's Ford, you're going to jail.
Exactly.
They're impounding
and there
your car.
is that double
you're
standard.
You're losing a job.
And,
you're cannabis. And then they detain him. And then they search his car. And now he's gone to jail. He's gotten a record. He lost his job because he was on the way to work. Right now he can't pay child support, so then he gets incarcerated for that. Right? It's a systematic problem. It all starts with this low barrier.
It's a... bill that has been in the North Carolina General Assembly. You want to talk about that very briefly?
Yes, that is a bill statewide that is going to decriminalize possession of cannabis less than 2 ounces. I think a big question for a lot of us is what happens if you pull over somebody and they have this less than 2 ounces? Are they given a ticket? What's the parameters around that ticket? Are you confiscating their medicine? I think there's more questions and more conversation. But this is a proactive and a very good step forward towards broad-scale decriminalization.
So until we can end the federal prohibition, North Carolina, there is a Senate bill that is been proposed last week, I believe, Senate Bill 58 in the North Carolina General Assembly Senate. And I know that Representative Alexander has been pushing this for several years in the House as well. He is the leader of the Mecklenburg delegation here in the Mecklenburg County, and I appreciate their work. And I need to say this because I feel really bad because people who watch this and people who have been following me over the last year, they feel as if though I have been on this white women bashing thing, and I've watched several of our shows, and anyone who knows me knows that there are many good people in our city, in our neighborhood, that are all colors. I can tell you, we've got some of the allies in our Latinx community, in the communities that I participated in, that are people of faith, that are have been sticking their neck out for a lot of our communities, and I appreciate what they do, even though sometimes it doesn't seem like they have a dog in the fight, and I appreciate the work they do. So the reason that I say that if it's a white woman, whatever, is because I'm hoping that we can get people to admit the fact that there is this privilege in Charlotte. And I know that, and I've said this before, that I know that even with the way I look, some people think I'm Italian, or not everyone, thinks I'm Latino,
they don't assume
or whatever.
it's a trick.
That I don't get the type of discrimination that other people in our community get.
Nor I, mine.
Yes, and so I realize that, and so I feel like I can speak to that, what I see here in South Charlotte, because I benefit from that sometimes, and but I also know when I'm on other sides of town, if it was something as simple as dressed in a certain way, that I would be profiled a certain way, or if I wasn't driving my Porsche on the other side of town, I would be, profiled a certain way. So right. I don't mean it to come across as bashing individuals. I guess I'm just trying to say that this is the reality that we see on our side of town. I think that was a good explanation.
how it feels is how it feels,
sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think the best way to address how someone else can make
sure.
someone feel is to have that direct conversation. I mean, to be frank, influential white women are very, very successful in getting whatever they want done. Well, and so I feel like if they're willing to work with the appropriate organizations to bring about equality and rights and freedom for everyone, then I fully embrace that. I fully support that.
Well, I grew up a white woman, so I just I don't know. That joke just didn't land very well. I tried to move. All right, that's a terrible joke. All right, so before we end, let's talk about our constitutional quote of the week. So this is, as you know, we always read one of the amendments in the Constitution, and this week we are talking about Amendment 9. Would you mind reading that amendment?
Yeah. The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people.
Excellent. So that is a amendment that we don't often talk about, and we usually have our man about town, Jeff Scott, here, who explains how this applies to everyday life and so forth. So once again, that's our constitutional quote of the week. I want to thank Sean for being here, and this is really an important issue that I've wanted to talk about, and I do hope that those who are watching this, especially those who were brought up like me, who just even talking about cannabis or marijuana was kind of like I don't know, there's a stigma with talking about it. I need to get past it.
Come get educated.
Yes.
I think
get educated.
Getting over the stigma is about getting educated, even if it's not for yourself.
Sure.
Think about it for people in your community that do have a need to get to understand what cannabis is. I think if we all collectively work to be educated about cannabis, then we can start casting off the stigma, and we can start having real tangible conversations about the right way to move forward that's best for everybody.
Sure.
Not just the ones that want to smoke, not just for the ones that have industry ties, but for the folks that have no affiliation, but they want to be able to welcome this product into their community in a healthy way.
Because
Let's talk about it.
Because the goal of NORML, my understanding, especially the Charlotte NORML chapter, is, and I apologize, Susie, but we're going to go over it just a little bit. She's going to kill me here. The goal is not only to end the prohibition or to decriminalize it, whatever, but also make sure that when it does happen, which many people are afraid we're going to be so late into the game that when it does happen, that the rights of the individual to grow it also is not monopolized by.
We want to protect the people in North. Yeah, you want to protect the people in North Carolina and keep big pharma out of our business.
Because we know over the last year we've heard Philip Morris, the parent company, Philip Morris is already starting to buy farms, starting to get ready for this. The ABC, Alcoholic Beverage Commission, they're starting to prepare what would happen. There's a lot of money. Once money gets involved in this, then it becomes
less about the people and more about the company.
Exactly.
And cannabis is a plant that's for the people.
Yes.
And that needs to be addressed first. That's why social justice is so important, because this is a for the people, by the people plant, and it's freedom. In its base root, and it's not meant to be corporate America owned.
Sure.
It's meant to be owned by individuals.
I fully support this, and I hope that Charlotte, Normal, and Normal in general continue to hold our elected public servants accountable on where they stand. Tell us where you stand on this issue, and educate them, because I think it is more difficult for them to not speak out in support of this when all the data and all the facts are in front of them, and it's really, really important, especially as we know Jeff Scott just mentioned that we're going to have two new redo elections. The congressional seat number 3. We're also going to have congressional seat number 9. There's probably going to be another election. We need to hold those candidates accountable, because this is a federal prohibition that I believe needs to end. It needs to be taken off the Schedule 1 drug. It is not a Schedule 1 drug. Should never have been.
Never should.
And that once that happens, I think it allows states to. It takes away that excuse for some people who are against it. Here in North Carolina, for example, I was really concerned, and we don't have time to talk about this, about the patents. If we get in it so late, there may be certain strands. I don't know if you know about that.
I know a little bit, but that's a long subject.
Yeah, that's a long subject. I'm really concerned about that. But listen, you guys do great work, and I appreciate the work that you do, and the stereotypes and the things you continue to break down. Sean, I know you're.
Yes.
We'll post that on our page also later.
Yes, you can reach out to me, Minorities for Medical Marijuana of North Carolina. So we're on Facebook. Charlotte Normal, we're on Facebook. We also have a regular web page. Come find me, guys. Talk to me. Ask your questions. I'm there for you. I'm available. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you, Sean. And don't forget Blau Catering. I know you need to read something. Blau Catering for our Pondusa, 704-805-0269. Heidi Blau. Thank you, Miss Heidi Blau, for sponsoring us. I appreciate that. Charlotte Normal. Please go to one of their meetings. Educate yourselves. This last Saturday was their monthly meeting, and House Representative John Autry was there, who is always ahead of the curve on movements. I appreciate his support. Representative Alexander, I know, who's represents part of Mecklenburg County as well. I hope that my representative, my new Brandon Lofton, I hope if you're watching this, and also please educate yourself on this issue, and all the other individuals. There is a Mecklenburg County delegation meeting on March the 9th, I believe.
I'll see you there. I'll be there.
Please be there. Have your voice heard. No one ever came to us and told us this was an important issue. So we want to make sure we do that. Also, if you want to sponsor one of our shows, Callie Lily's event coordinator, talent agency team. Is there anything else that I forgot to cover before we disconnect? Because our signal seems to be having some challenges.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much. We will see you next week, and hopefully Jeff Scott will be off the streets and back here, and hopefully we'll have Ruth and Tony and maybe even Fudd back. Who knows? And I do believe we have a special guest next week. Is that correct? That is
Mr.
We will post his name. We have a special guest that's going to be with us next Wednesday, a community advocate, I believe, as well, within our community. And so we are excited to see him next week. So thank you very much, and we'll see you next week on Coffee and Pondusi. Thank you very much.